Like the Jews did with who? I'm sorry, not the Jews, not like Christians did with who? Isa ibn Maryam. They started out talking about how the miracles he did and how sinless he was and how close to Allah he was and this, and then they went from that to what? He's the son of Allah. He is Allah. He's one of three that make up Allah. Three parts of Allah. You guys see that? They didn't get there mubasharatan, immediately, but what? It was staged. The second one he mentioned was what? Ibadat Allah in the qubur as-salihin. Worshipping Allah in the proximity of the grave. You're worshiping Allah, but you're worshiping Him where? Near the grave. You do that, and you bring your kids, and you bring other people who are just not familiar with what you actually are doing. And over time, knowledge is lost, and they think, we were going to worship the grave. No! We were going to what? To worship Allah at the grave. But over a period of time, people do what? They forget why they actually are there, and they come to what? They come to believe we should be worshiping what? The grave itself. Wasila min wasail al-shirk. So now he comes and he says that when we exaggerate regarding the graves of the people of the righteous people, that will make those graves, he said, wathanan, a monument, worship besides Allah. But wathan is anything and everything which is worship besides Allah, سواء كان على صورة روح أو صورة حي أو صورة ذات روح أو غير ذلك. Anything, three-dimensional object that is propped up and it is worship besides Allah is called a wathan. Whether it is shaped and fashioned in the figure of something with a soul or not. The difference between a wathan and a sanam is that a sanam is always what? It's always shaped and fashioned fi surat hay, fi surat that ruh. Y'all see that? It's shaped and fashioned in the form of something that has what? That has life or has a soul. So, you go to Washington, D.C., and you go to the Lincoln Memorial. Lincoln Memorial has what? It has actually a statue of what? Of Lincoln shaped and formed in his fashion sitting on a chair. We call that what? Wathan or sanam? Sanam. Y'all see that? Because it's shaped what? In the form of what? An actual human being. But they also have there the Washington Monument. Y'all know what the Washington Monument is, right? It's that big what? That big old peak, right? Looks like a stake with what? With a point. We call that what? Wathan. Wathan. So a wathan, it doesn't have to be in the shape or form of something that what? That has ruh. But if it's something that people go and they what? They venerate. And they erect it to what? To honor the memory of someone. So that they'll be what? Remembered and honored and venerated. The Washington Monument. Doesn't look like Washington, but we erected it what? So you remember who? Washington. Call it what? Wathan. Y'all see that? A sanam is going to be in the shape of what? Something with ruh. Something with what? With a soul. Right? Y'all see that? So when the Jews made the calf, they made the golden calf, they made what? A sanam. So every sanam is a wathan. But not every wathan is a sanam. So that's why he said, Yusayyiruha wathanan, or othanan. He used the word wathan because why? A person may not take a grave and shape it in the form of a human being. But they might erect what? A monument. They'll erect something that, hey, this marks the qabr of so-and-so fulan as-salih. The person, this such person who is righteous. Let's go there. And let's what? Let's stand and venerate him. Right? Plain. So then the Imam, he starts mentioning some of the proofs and evidence to support what he asserted as the title. He says, Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, recording his book in Muwatta, that the Prophet said, Allahumma la taj'al qabri wathanan yu'bad. اشتد غضب الله على قوم اتخذوا قبور أنبيائهم مساجد. So in this hadith, the Prophet, he says, Oh Allah, he prays to Allah. Never turn my grave into an idol. He's seeking refuge with Allah that two things will happen. If the Prophet is seeking refuge with something, If the prophet is seeking refuge in something, saying, oh Allah, don't let this happen. I seek refuge in you that this should happen. Is this something that's likely to happen? Never going to happen? It might happen. What do you think? It's likely to happen. The prophet's not going to seek refuge with Allah in something that what? It's not likely to happen. It's unlikely to happen. It's going to happen. So what does that mean? That means that there's going to be some Muslims who will do what? Who will commit shirk. Some Muslims who after believing will commit kufr. And that means all of us should be what? Should be afraid. And we should be afraid not just of shirk itself and losing our religion, but we should be afraid of everything that could what? Could lead to it. Y'all see that? And the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith, he didn't mention the people who do shirk. He didn't say, oh Allah, don't let people in my ummah do shirk. He mentioned al-wasa'il. He sought refuge with Allah from what? From things that lead to shirk and not the shirk itself. Which lets you know that this is something that we should be what? Afraid of, because the Prophet was afraid of. So he says, La taj'al qabri wathanan yu'bad. That's the first one. The first wasila. Don't turn my grave into a monument. Something that people come and they venerate and they exaggerate in this veneration, trying to honor my memory through what? Through my grave, and then end up what? Exceeding the bounds, exaggerating in the veneration of my grave. Such that it becomes a weapon, it becomes a monument or an idol which is worshipped. Then he says, غضب الله على قوم اتخذوا قبور أنبيائهم مساجد. He mentions another wasila, and he mentioned that one previously. He says the anger of Allah, or Allah's wrath, is on people who turn their prophets' graves into masajid. Y'all see that? So he mentioned two wasa'il. So this lets you know that we're supposed to be afraid not just of shirk itself, but things that lead to shirk. Then he mentioned the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتَ وَالْعُزَّى. Have you then considered al-Lat wal-Uzza, two idols, worshipped what? Near the Kaaba. Ibn Jarir al-Tabari reported from Sufyan, from Mansur, from Mujahid, who said, كَانَ يَلُدُّ لَهُمُ السَّوِيقِ فَمَاتَ فَعَكَفُوا عَلَى قَبْرِهِ. That this Lat, the Lat, the idol al-Lat is a monument for, is a man who used to serve the pilgrims by preparing sawiq for them. What is a sawiq? It's like a mixture of wheat and barley. It's like a mixture of wheat and barley that you turn into a paste by adding honey and ghee to it. And it's something was like what? It's like a delicacy. It's like a delicacy. So he used to what? He used to make this. And according to one of the riwayat, كان يلوت السويق للحج. So he would make this special like paste and he would give it to what? Al-Hujjaj. He would serve them. And he became famous for that. And people might even like look forward to it. I can't wait for the season of Hajj when we'll go and Lat will do what? Yalut lana as-sawiq. He will do what? He'll make that special paste, wheat, barley, ghee, and asal. Y'all see that? So when he died, akafu ala qabri. When he died, they remained in the proximity of his grave, solemnly venerating it and devoting or dedicating themselves to that space, honoring his memory and remembering him fondly. Y'all see that? That's al-ukuf. Now I'm going to ask you honestly. If you go to somebody's grave and you just reflect, man, this was a good dude. He was a good man, and he did these good things, and I really appreciate having known him. Is that haram? Is that shirk? It's not shirk. But could it lead to shirk? Y'all see that? So the Prophet is prohibiting this because what? It can lead to shirk. Because people start there, and next thing you know, they start what? They start, you know what? We need to do what? Because he was such a good man, we need to do something with his grave that makes it stand out from what? From the other graves. Y'all see that? So they do that. And then after they do that, they say, okay, since he was such a good man, okay, maybe we should leave things here. Right? Maybe we should put a reef here. Maybe we should put food here and drink here. Maybe we should, y'all see that? All right, okay, if we're going to do this, maybe we should offer prayers here. Right? And if we're going to offer prayers, maybe we should pray what? To him that he will ask Allah to forgive us and pardon us, because certainly it's close to Allah. Y'all see that? So you go from here to what? To here, to here, to here, to what? To actually committing shirk, praying to somebody else. Then by that, he mentioned the other from Abbas who said that the Prophet sometimes said, لعن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم زائرات القبور والمتغيرين عليها المساجد والسروج. He says, Allah's messenger cursed the women who visit the graves. He also cursed those who set up mosques and light over graves. So, if you look at the second part of the hadith, this is the part that's applicable to what? To the actual title of the chapter, or the subject matter of the chapter. And that is those who set up mosques. They would set up like a site, like a, what do they call it? Like a mausoleum? What do they call it? The tomb, the raised structure that they put over a grave. There's a name for it. It's not. I don't think it's mausoleum. What is it? What's it called? Huh? No, the raised structure. It's almost like a little house, like a tomb, but there's other words for it. Is it mausoleum? Okay, so they would do like a mausoleum, right? Something like that. Or مُتَّخِذِينَ عَلَيْهَا masajid could just mean what? They don't build a structure, but they do what? They offer acts of worship there. They should only be offered where? In the mosque. ثم بعد ذلك he said, وَالسُّرُجْ. They do what? They put lights there. Have you ever been to a cemetery and there's a light for the grave? This is a form of what? Al-ghulu. This is a form of exaggeration. We don't put lights on graves. In fact, the scholars are agreed that it's haram to put lights on a grave. Somebody says, well, how do you bury people in the nighttime? You bring what? You bring a light to what? To light the burial, and after you leave with what? You leave with the light. The problem is not lighting the area so you can see and maneuver. The problem is doing what? Having a light constantly on what? On a grave. Y'all see that? Like food by that, I think we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. There's a couple things that we may touch on tomorrow. We'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about a couple of other points. I don't want to go too long, we kind of went long, but there's a few points and there's a khulasa, just what we should take away. Atfadal Hatim.
So simply visiting the grave, my understanding is that the prohibition for that advocate, because the Prophet said,
Hey, you guys listen to this is important, what Hatim is saying.
So the prohibition of simply visiting the grave just for remembrance. I mean, it was originally prohibited, but then it was abrogated. The Prophet said in one hadith, ألا إني كنت قد نهيتكم عن زيارة القبور ألا فزوروها فإنها تذكر بالموت. So I had forbidden you from visiting the graves, but visit them for they remind of death. So just visiting, just to remember, without doing any of those other things, was originally prohibited, but then it was abrogated. I think for both men and women, I think, because there are other hadiths also that mention that he gave permission to some. But of course, women not to go there and wail and all of that. If they behave correctly, then that's also was later permitted for them just to visit and remember.
Okay, I was going to save that to tomorrow, but since you mentioned it, we'll go ahead and talk about it in the Mujalla. So, the visiting of the graves, as Hatim alluded to, it evolved, or the ruling of the Islamic position about it evolved. So initially it was prohibited. It was prohibited ihtiyatan. It was prohibited just as a precautionary measure. Then comes the hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ, he says, كنت نهيتكم عن زيارة القبور إلى آخره. right? He said, I used to prohibit you from going to the graves. Now what? Go to them. But so now, in fiqh, or in usul fiqh, there's a principle that says, okay, amrun ba'd nahyin yusayyir al-hukm, okay, or yusayyir al-haram mustahabban, or something like that. That's the way they talk about it. So basically, if something is prohibited, and then after that we're commanded to do that thing doesn't become wajib, it becomes instead what? Mustahab, right? It becomes allowed and something what? Recommended. And the Prophet explained the illah al-istihbab. Why is it recommended to go and visit the graves? Because إِنَّهَا تُذَكِّرْ بِالْمَوْتِ. Because the graves, visiting the graves, ziyarat al-qubur, it will remind you of what? Of death. طيب. Now the question comes, هل هذا الحكم, okay, does this ruling يشمل الرجال والنساء أو هو مجرد للرجال دون النساء? Is it something that it encompasses males and females, or is it just for males and females? Scholars of Islam differ about that. They differ about whether or not women can visit the graves, and they're included in what the Prophet said when he said فَالْآنَ زُرُوهَا, right? So now go to them, go and visit them. طيب. The first thing is zuruha. You could say it's an amr or command to what? To just males. But generally speaking, in the Arabic language, when you al-khitab al-rijal, jam'an, you talk to men as a what? As a plural, it encompasses what? Women too. طيب. Now, there's another thing we have to consider, and that is that the scholars of Islam differ about the hurma, it being prohibited for women to visit the graves. They differ about that. But they have ijma', they have agreement. And this ijma' was حكاه ابن تيمية في مجموع الفتاوى, that it's not mustahab. They have agreement, the scholars have agreement. It is not encouraged, it is not recommended for women to go to the graves. Now circle back to what we just said earlier. All right? We said that when the Prophet gives a nahi, he says, you can't do this. It's absolutely prohibited to do this. Then he comes after that and says what? Do it. You have a continuum, right? You have a spectrum. You have wajib, mustahab, or mubah, permitted. You have wajib, required. Mustahab, recommended. Mubah, permitted. Makruh, disliked. Then you have what? Haram, prohibited. طيب الآن, if the Prophet says, don't do something, it's haram. Then he says, do it. We don't go from haram to what? Wajib, required. We go where? Mustahab, recommended. طيب, so visiting the graves is recommended, and the scholars of Islam are agreed. It's not recommended for women to go to the graves. Y'all see that? And this is how many scholars concluded women shouldn't go. They're not included in the khitab. Because if we say the Prophet prohibiting something and then commanding it makes it mustahab, and the scholars are agreed, regardless of their opinions, they differ about whether it's haram, but they all agree it's not recommended. You see that? Then that gives strength to the opinion that says women shouldn't go, because why? The ruling of going is what? Mustahab. So it's not mustahab for them to go, it means they shouldn't go. Y'all see that? Now, because it's a difference of opinion, some women will go. And when they go, we don't make a stink about it. You see what I'm saying? But the evidence and the usul, the way that we're supposed to, 1 + 1 = 2 when it comes to what? Fiqh and coming to conclusions, the evidence and the way that we're supposed to apply the evidence to draw a conclusion seems to indicate that women are not supposed to go. Because why? Because the ruling of going is mustahab, and the scholars, regardless of their madhab, as it relates to this issue, they all agree it's not mustahab for women to go. Y'all see that? And so that's where the debate is at.
So a lot of times I pass by the cemetery Park Views every year, and I'm with my wife. So
driving by your
No, I go to visit.
Okay.
So if I'm with her, I should not take her like out of the car or not in the cemetery at all.
Well, again, because it's a matter of difference of opinion, we don't want to be, we don't want to be unequivocal. I'm saying the way that when you put everything together, because there's a method to the way that we make these conclusions. It's not just we pluck a text out of the air and then we say this is the opinion. We have to take all the text together, and then we have to apply an epistemology. There's a method to what? To taking all these evidences, putting them into a mixer, and then ultimately coming out with a conclusion. Y'all see that? It's almost like a flow chart, right? And engineers, y'all know something about that. A little something about flow charts, right? Okay, so you follow the flow chart, and then ultimately it comes out with what? With a result. And so when we follow that flow chart, like I said, the opinion that says women shouldn't go is very strong. You see what I'm saying? But the point is that the point that the hadith makes is that it's not like what? It's not like it's a situation like this where, hey, I'm not going to be able to go because she's in the car with me, and what am I going to do? It's like one of those things where, okay, go in, do your thing, and leave out. Leave your wife in the car, however it is. You see what I'm saying? It's not something stringent. But when we get to the nitty-gritty and we're trying to make a decision about what is the stronger opinion, it seems the stronger opinion is that women shouldn't go. Why? Because the hukam of it all is what? Bottom line seems to be what? It's mustahab. And the scholars all agree that it's not recommended for women to go to the graveyard. Fine. تفضل حاتم.
Now about the issue of wife and those things. Now, do we also consider